Good morning, everyone, or good afternoon, depending on where you are. This is lesson number 5 of Learning TradeStation. My name is Jesus Nava. I'm the Director of Client Training and Education here at TradeStation, and it's a pleasure to be spending this time with all of you today. Welcome, everyone. Learning TradeStation is an educational program that is divided in 12 different lessons. Let me show you those lessons to you here on the screen. Today is January 19th. We are doing lesson number 5, Analysis Techniques and Drawing Tools. We still have a few lessons to go to complete the series. Once the series is complete, we're going to produce the videos and upload them and replace the ones that are in the archives of TradeStation. See, in the archive, we still have the older version, but once we complete the series, we're going to replace those older videos with the new videos that we've recorded in this learning TradeStation. The box below is your chat window. During the presentation, you may submit questions or comments. We're going to try to keep the questions topical so that everybody can benefit from the answers and the demonstrations that I do online. As we said earlier, all these presentations are being recorded and they'll be available for playback sometime the first week of February. The documents are going to be at the bottom right-hand corner. Let me highlight the button for you. If you go there, you'll find the class PDF and other interesting and relevant links about this class. Before we proceed, here's some important information. Keep in mind that this presentation is for educational purposes only. That if I mention any symbol or any trading idea is for demonstration purposes only, and they are not recommendations of TradeStation. Also keep in mind that active trading is not suitable for everyone. If you'd like to read more about the risks that are associated with online trading, we have 2 important documents that are available in the documents section. I'll share those 2 documents with everyone here in the chat, and you can read more about those disclosure statements in those 2 links. Okay, let's get started. In today's class, this is the content that we are going to present. This is the page 1 of the PDF that is available in the documents section. You can see the table of contents. We're going to discuss drawing tools, mostly how to draw them and all the technicalities that come with drawing tools. This is not a class to explain how to interpret drawing tools, but we're going to go into a little bit of formatting and styling and what to do with those drawing tools. Then we're going to jump over to analysis techniques and how to use indicators, how to use ShowMes, how to use PaintBars, and all those different technical analyses that are available in your platform. We'll show you how to format those analysis techniques, how to do multi-data analysis, the ability for you to have multiple symbols in a graph and use technical analysis or calculations that use those multiple symbols. We're going to take a look at percent change charts. And towards the end of the class, we're going to show you how to import analysis techniques into your platform, not only from the Easy Language library, but also from the Trading App Store. So we'll go over 2 examples so that you can see how to expand the different technical analysis that come built into TradeStation. So we have our hands pretty much full for the next 90 minutes. So let's get started. I'm going to jump over here to my TradeStation platform. I'm using TradeStation 9.5. Let me clear this chart of everything that I draw earlier. And we're going to start off with a chart. This is the chart of Apple set to a daily interval. The way that I brought up a chart was going to Trading Apps, and I clicked on the chart analysis icon. That's the way you create a chart. Okay. All right. To take care of some of the questions that are in the chat, the older videos are right here. Let me just share the link with everyone. It's right there in the documents. Is this one titled Video Archives Learning TradeStation? And as I said earlier, the content that is there is the last time we did Learning TradeStation series. The content is still relevant. So if you want to go there and review the content, it's pretty much the same class. It's just done at a different time. Some of the charts are going to be older, and for the most part, they concentrate on different technical analysis. So there is a benefit of reviewing the content of that older class. All right. And once we make the new classes available, the new recordings available, we're going to replace the older ones. We always try to keep only one version of this class, the one that is most recent, because usually that's the one that contains, the most recent version of TradeStation with the newer functionality and any new features that have been implemented. Okay, so we start off with a chart of Apple. We said that this is a daily chart. If you are the type of TradeStation user that uses drawing tools a lot, we recommend to enable the charting drawing toolbar. I believe that on TradeStation is set on by default. So every time you open up a chart, like I do here, on the left-hand side of your TradeStation, there should be a vertical drawing toolbar. I don't have it here on my screen because I disabled it, but if you find yourself that you're always going to the drawing menu, see we have a drawing menu up here. If you do that too many times, maybe having the toolbar here on the left-hand side would be convenient for you. How do you enable a drawing toolbar? We go to the View menu, Toolbars, and you'll find the toolbars that are part of the TradeStation platform. One of those toolbars is called Drawing. If it's not checked, like mine is not, then that is not visible on your TradeStation. But as soon as I click on Drawing, you can see how the Drawing toolbar appears on the left-hand side of my chart. That toolbar is only available, or it's only visible when you have a chart open. So if I come over here to my trading apps and I create a window different than a chart analysis, let's say that I go to a matrix window, you can see how the drawing toolbar on the left disappeared because it doesn't apply to matrix anymore. So those toolbars are window specific. They're only visible as the window is active. If I click on the background here of the chart, and I bring it to the forefront, notice how on the left-hand side I have my toolbar back one more time. Okay, so I have my toolbars displayed on the left-hand side. It gives me buttons to enable some of these drawing tools that we're going to use today. The first one that I wanted to show you is this one called the horizontal line. As the name implies, that's exactly what it does. It just draws a horizontal line. If you're not going to use the toolbar here on the left-hand side, the horizontal line is found by going to the drawing menu, and you find the horizontal line there also. Okay, so it doesn't matter which way you go, both will give you a horizontal line. Let me show you how this works. I click on the button for horizontal line. Take a look at my cursor. It changes from a little arrow to a little dashed line. See, I can see it here on my screen. So I just have to take that little cursor and put it anywhere that I want to draw that horizontal line. So looking at the price scale here, I can choose the price where I want that horizontal line. Let's say that I want to do it down here where the 100 is. I know that Apple is trading right now at 97.30. So let's say that I want to be somehow notified if at any point during the day, today or tomorrow, Apple goes beyond 100. It crosses 100. This is one of the easiest ways to set up a price alert on any symbol that you're following. So I'm going to come here to somewhere around the $100, and I'm just going to do one click. That sets my trend line. The trend line has some little nods, like white boxes or white little points. Whenever you see those white boxes on a line, that just means that that specific line has been selected. It's just a selection tool. It doesn't have any analytical value. In fact, if I click on the background once with my left mouse button, you can see how those little nods disappear. That means that the object is not selected. I can click on it again, and the white boxes come on. it just means that that one is selected. It allows you to know which one of the drawing tools or which one of the items in a chart analysis is selected. If I were to click on or press the delete key on my keyboard, I know which one is going to be deleted because it's the one that has the little white dots or the white knots on it, you know? So easiest way to remove analysis techniques is to click on one of its line, or one of its lines, and then just press delete on the keyboard. Okay, so I'm just going to click here in the background. I have my horizontal line. It's exactly at 100. If you look here on the left-hand side, it gives me a label of where that line is drawn. Sometimes when you draw a line, it may not fall exactly at the price you want. And I've had that problem many times before, where you're drawing something and because you're using your hand freestyle, it's really hard to pinpoint a specific price. If that happens, don't think that you're forced to click and drag the line, because I can click this line and drag it to any other different price. Notice that I just raised it to 102.80 by just clicking and dragging, but I can always bring it down to 100. So if you're clicking and dragging a line and you can't quite drop it on the exact price that you want, let me show you a different way that you can move it. Double click on the line, and by double clicking on any drawing tool, it takes you to the format dialog for that drawing tool. In this case, I'm going to format horizontal line. I click on the data tab, and the data tab is the one that controls the position of any line. Here I have the price, and it tells you what price it is. In fact, the price that I have here is $99.99. Is not quite 100. I think my horizontal line here on the left-hand side is somehow rounding up. But if I want to be more precise, I just say, give me a line at 100, and then click OK, and the line will move to that price. If I want to change it to a different location without clicking and dragging, I want to be more precise, I can double click and say, give me a line at 101.25. That's the price that I want. I click OK. And notice how the line moves to that price, 101.25, and I have one in place. Just click and drag it down to 100 even. And now I can't even drop it at 100 even. It goes from 105 to 99.99. So again, double click, enter the price manually, and then click OK. Okay. One thing is drawing lines on a graph, and a totally different thing is having that trend line give you an alert if something happens. Let's talk about alerting a little bit, because alerts in TradeStation are turned off by default. So you do have to go and turn on the alert if you want TradeStation to give you some sort of notification if something's happening. In this case, the crossover 100. Again, we double click on the line. It takes us to the format horizontal line, and one of the tabs here is called alerts. This is where we control what happens when there's a crossover of that line. We can check the box for enable alert. There are three behaviors that are included in this menu. We have a breakout intra bar, breakout on close, and breakout intra interbar. Now, sometimes it's a little confusing what the difference is between these three behaviors. They're all breakouts, but there are intricacies or details that you're going to want to keep in mind when you select a specific behavior. Intra bar is the default one. An intra bar requires for the price to touch the line. At least the bar has to be touching the line somehow. Like, for example, when you look at the bars over here, you see how the bar is touching that line? That's exactly what this behavior is looking for, breakout intra bar. If you choose breakout on close, the alert is not going to be triggered until the bar closes and it matches the criteria. In this case, it's closing above or below the line depending on where the line is drawn. Currently, the price activity is below the line, so what we're looking for is the bar to close above the line. If that happens, then that would trigger this alert. So the first one, as soon as it's touched. The second one waits until the close. So what does the third one do? This is called a breakout intra-interbar. Well, we know what intra does. Intra looks for a touch within the bar. As soon as a tick touches the line, it actually generates the alert. But sometimes the price activity does not touch the line, and that happens in gaps. If the price jumps and creates a visible gap where the line is not even touched, that's called interbar. So this third one allows you to generate an alert not only if it touches it, but if there is a big jump in price and there's no touch of the line, then you get alerted as well. Okay, hopefully that makes sense. 3 different behaviors, and we want to make sure we select the one we would like to use. We have 3 results: alert once per bar. That's based on the interval. So if you have a daily chart, it'll only alert you once per bar. And then we have the alert continuously. I always tell users of TradeStation to be careful about alert continuously, especially if you have hundreds or you're monitoring hundreds of symbols simultaneously, because if you set them all to alert continuously, and there's a big move in the market where all symbols are triggering the alert, you may make your TradeStation get hung up in generating all these alerts, hundreds of alerts per second. So be careful when using alert continuously if you have or following alerts on a lot of symbols. You can configure the message center notification, so the type of alert that you're receiving. For the most part, if you don't change it, it's going to use the global messaging preferences. And those settings are displayed here in this box where you have an audio beep. And then you have a visual pop-up window for 15 seconds. Those are the defaults. If you want to be notified differently, click on the configure button here on the right. And here you can just use your creativity and choose the sounds you want, choose how that visual pop-up is going to be displayed on the screen, or even set up email so that TradeStation sends you an email if an alert is triggered on your platform. Okay. Theodora has a good question on the chat. She's asking about drawing trend lines on a graph and have that same trend line appear on all different graphs on that same symbol. Unfortunately, that is not possible. So all the drawing tools that you draw are specific to the window where you're drawing them. They're not transferred over to any different symbols. However, let me show you something really cool. I have a daily chart here of Apple, and I have a horizontal line drawn at 100. If I change the data interval of my chart, let's say to 60-minute, this is a 60-minute chart of Apple. Take a look at the horizontal line. I still have the horizontal line going across the screen because it's the same symbol and it's in the vicinity of where the price activity is. You know, right here, Apple is trading at 97, but since some historical bars are you know, below and above 100, I still see my trend line. What doesn't happen, let's say, for example, that I change this to a 1-minute chart. See, the 1-minute chart doesn't have the trend line because it was drawn at 100. And based on my automatic price scale that is adjusted based on whatever's on the screen, that horizontal line is all the way up here, not visible. It's just not visible, but it's still there. If I click on my background dragging, we talked about this on Friday, the ability for you to drag the bar. I'm going to click on it so that I can take the background and move it higher. And you see the trend line right there. So even though it's not visible on the graph, charting remembers any drawing tool that you draw on inside that graph, and depending on the price scale and where it is, it'll always be displayed for Apple. Not for a different symbol. If I change the symbol, all these drawing tools are going to disappear because they're symbol specific. So if I change this to, let me disable background dragging. Let me change this to Disney, for example. Disney is also trading at, you know, $94. But if I click on my background dragging and I move this up to see if I find my line at 100, you're going to see that it's not there. You see the horizontal line or any drawing tool that you draw is specific to the symbol on which it is drawn. Okay, I'm going back to Apple. All right, Denise, I'm using 9.5. You can see the version here, TradeStation 9.5. I'm not sure what build this is, but anyone can go to help and about TradeStation 9.9, and you can get the actual version that you're using. I'm using update 14 on this computer. And Phil, your question about a global drawing tool, yes, that's exactly what Theodora was asking for. No, there's no global horizontal line. It is always displayed on the graph where it's being drawn. No global drawing tools at this moment. Okay, let's go ahead and talk about some other drawing tools. Let me change this to a daily chart again. We have our horizontal line in there. We can keep it there. Let's explain what snap mode does. I'm just going to spend a few more minutes here on drawing tools. Snap mode. Snap mode is a functionality here that allows you to snap to different prices on the chart or on the graph. Sometimes it helps you, sometimes it does not. Like for example, let me select a trend line. A trend line is a freestyle line that you draw on the chart. Let me click on trend line. My cursor changes into a little pencil. It allows me to draw any line in any direction that I want. But notice that I can remove that line from the bars. So I can draw this line right there on top, and it requires me to click on where the line starts, and then it requires me to click on a second place to know where the line ends. And this will, of course, determine the angle of that line. The same white boxes appear. If I click on the background, the white boxes disappear. If I click on the line, the white boxes come on. I can click on the line and drag it to any location and somehow align it with the bars that I see on the screen. But let me show you something interesting. Let me remove that line, and to remove it, I'm just going to click on that line and press delete on the keyboard. And I'm going to go to the drawing menu and turn on this feature called snap mode. I click on my trend line indicator, which is this one here on the toolbar. Now, if I were to click here outside of the bars and I click, notice how the line automatically attaches to the closest price that it finds. In this case, it attached to the high of that candle. And if I try to move that line outside of the price activity, it won't let me because I've turned on snap mode. So it is automatically snapping to the closest price that it finds. But this helps you, attach the line to a specific price without having, to be so precise on where to click on. Here I can take this I can take this trend line and select any of the highs that I see here on any of these bars, and it will automatically attach to it. So if I choose this one over here, or I can choose this one over here, and then click, it draws that trend line. The same as we did with the horizontal line, if you want to do an alert, Apple has been on a downswing for the past several weeks. If you want to be notified when Apple breaks that trend line, we double click on that trend line. We have a couple things that we can do to it, like enable an alert. And we have the same settings here. Enabled alert. We can do breakout interbar so that it helps us monitor the breakouts when it's not touched. We can say alert continuously and say alert once per bar if I wanted to do that. And then click OK. Now the alert is on. And as soon as there's a breakout on that trend line, I should get alerted. And you can do other things too. I'm not sure if you noticed, but if I double click here, you can change the style of the line too. The color, the style of the line, the thickness of the line, and so many different things that you can do to that line. Let's say that I want to do the thickness. I want to make this line blue, but I want to do not a solid blue, something that it's a little bit more transparent. So I change the transparency and I say click and I say OK. So now I have a line that is not so intense, but it's still there and it's visible on the screen. The length of the line. Thank you, Virgil, for the question. If I click on the line one more time, you can see two bigger boxes. One right here at the beginning and another one right here where I did the second click. That is controlling where the line is drawn. I can click on any of those nodes and change where the line starts. One extreme, and I can click on the other one to also change where the line is going to end. If the line is not doing what you want it to do, it's probably because you have snap mode on. So always remember, if you want to draw something outside or detached from the bars, just come here to drawing and disable snap mode. That'll give you full flexibility of drawing and drawing things outside or removed from the bars. If you want to truncate the line, you can see how the line automatically extends to the right. Right-clicking on the line gives you different options also. You can change the color from here. Let's say that I want to use a different color. There it is. Right-click on it. You also have the two options to extend right and extend left. If you don't want the line to extend, just remove the checkbox from extend right, and notice how the line is truncated. A lot of times users want to do just a segment of a line. They don't want to do a complete line. So make sure that you right-click on the line and make the selections you need. If you want that to be the default, this is something really important. If you want that to be the default, double-click on the line. We got some settings here that has checkboxes left and right. Make the changes you want and set that as your default so that every time you draw a line, you don't have to go back and format it. All right. Here in the drawing tool, we have things like a vertical line. If you want to click on a vertical line, it tells you the date and the time where that vertical line is. Sometimes if you want to highlight a particular bar because that's where you purchased or entered the market, or that is a turning point in the market, you can always highlight it with the vertical line. We have some non-analytical drawing tools like arrows, ellipses, squares. If I click on a square and I draw it, it'll require you to click on two places. First of all, the first click that starts the box, the second click that ends it, and then you can format that box to be any color and any style you need. If I want to change the fill to a little transparent, I can do that also. Trend lines have some labels that you can display. I see your question, Nayan, about attaching a label to the trend line. If I come over here and I double click on my trend line, we have a tab for labels. You can show the labels on the trend line and then select what labels to show, like show the price percent change, the price net change, the bar count, and the time span. Let's see what that looks like. And I click OK. It has all that information here. A little hard to see. Let me see if I change the font or the color here to something that it's a little bit more intense. You can see how it tells you what is the net price movement, $18.67. It tells you the percent, which is 15%. How many bars are from one point to the other? There's 25 bars. And how many, what's the time span? This is 37 days from one point to the next. The information is a little hard to see because of the bars. So if you want to know that information, just click on the line and hold your mouse button. On any trend line, if you click and hold your mouse button, you get this data tips with all that information. Where it begins, where it ends, the angle. See, the angle is negative 49 degrees. You have the net change, the percent change, the bar count, and the time span. This is great information on a trend line. Not only it serves as monitoring support and resistance areas, but it also allows you to measure, price movement. So if I wanted to measure the price movement from this trough all the way to this peak, I can say, okay, I grab this trend line, I click down here, click up here. Once you draw it, I click and hold, and it tells me that the net change is 31 points. It increased 34%. It took 51 bars or 72 days. So anytime you want to measure the distance between one point and the next, Trend lines are very useful for that. All right. If you have a lot of stuff here on the graph, I have a trend line, a box, I have a vertical line, a horizontal line. If you want to clear your graph altogether without having to individually select these drawing tools and remove them, just go to drawing. There's an option here that says remove drawing objects. It gives you a menu with all the different objects you can draw. I'm just going to say select all and then click OK. And it removes everything that I drew on the chart. You have access to the Fibonacci price retracement lines. These are Fibonacci cycles. These are the Fibonacci price retracement lines. So if I click on the Fibonacci price retracement lines, this will allow me to draw a trend. Let's say that I will go from this peak and I go all the way down here to the bottom here of this drop, right there. Okay, so there's a big price swing. Once you draw or select the 2 points that calculate the Fibonacci, then it'll draw the lines at the different Fibonacci percentages, 23%, 38, 61, and 76. And you have those horizontal lines that will work as support and resistance lines based on the Fibonacci calculations. So this is a big movement right here. If it goes up to this horizontal or the first horizontal line, that's a 23% price retracement. So great tool. If you need information about how to interpret Fibonacci tools or any of the drawing tools that are here, like the Andrews Pitchfork, there's a ton of information on our help files and also on the net. When I want to learn how to interpret something, I always use a search engine that searches the web, and I get a ton of information on how to use these technical analysis. The Fibonacci retracement lines can be formatted as well. You can double-click on any of its lines. It takes you to this Format dialog. It has the Settings tab where you can add additional percentages. These are the ones that come on it by default. You can change the colors of the lines, and you can set alerts if you wanted to do so. Theodora, there's a forum that is available in the community. When you go to TradeStation.com and you go to community, there's a section for discussion forums. There's a forum that is called the TradeStation Enhancements Suggestions Forum. So if anyone has an interesting idea that you want our product managers to look at and our developers to discuss, make sure you go to the discussion forum and start a poll there. Users of TradeStation usually vote towards a suggestion, so it's an interesting way to make suggestions and make those available and visible to our product managers. Vincent? Okay, you got it. Perfect. Nayan, your question, can you attach a label to the trend line? You cannot really attach a label to a line, but you can definitely use text. I can come here, click on text, and I can click on any or at the close to any of these lines and then add any text that I want. So if I want to add the word support, I just type it in and it'll stay there. Okay, it's not attached to the line, but it'll stay there, and as long as I don't click on it and delete it, it'll always be there. But it's not, there's no feature to actually attach to it, but you can always type in text to any line that you draw. Alfred, I'll give you, once we start talking about indicators, I'll show you how to insert the Ichimoku cloud onto your chart analysis. Yeah, it's available in TradeStation, and I'll show you how to use it. Susan, thank you for the suggestion. Yes, if you draw something on the graph and it's not following your cursor, it's just jumping around, make sure that snap mode is off. Virgil, your question about drawing a line freestyle. Yes, the only way that you can do that is by clicking on, make sure snap mode is off. So snap mode is not selected, and just click on the trend line. And you can draw any line freestyle. If you want to draw a curved line, that's something different. That is not possible in TradeStation. So if you want to grab a pencil and draw on it, yeah, that's not available at this time. but feel free to draw circles, squares, lines, all those drawing tools on your chart. Phil, yes, there is a tracking mode that you can play around with. I think I explained this last class on charting, tracking, pointer tracking. So in the drawing menu, there's a pointer tracking that allows you to set a tracking where the graphs will give you a vertical track or a vertical point, and make sure that all the graphs will jump to that same point, and you'll see that vertical line shown across all different graphs. And Android text is right here. On the toolbar, you find the text toolbar button, or you can also go to drawing and you find the option to select text from here. All right, let's go ahead and continue. We have analysis techniques. That's on page 2 of the PDF. TradeStation has multiple types of analysis techniques. Let me remove this Fibonacci by deleting it, and I'm going to disable the drawing toolbar from the left so it's not using up space in our desktop. So I'm going to go to toolbars and then uncheck my drawing toolbar so that it goes away. When you go to the insert menu and you go to indicator, it takes you to the insert analysis techniques dialog. This is divided in 5 different tabs: indicators, ShowMes, PaintBars, activity bars, and probability maps. You can also access this dialog by right-clicking on the background and going to Insert Analysis Techniques from the right-click menu. It'll take you to the exact same place. Most of the technical indicators that are popular in the industry are going to be available in the Indicator tab. Let me show you a few that are interesting. Let's go to Volume Average. A lot of times we get the question from TradeStation users, how do I color code my volume indicator based on up prices or down prices? Let's select the volume average. I'm going to click OK. The indicator shows right there at the bottom of the screen. For the most part, I like my indicators to show up a little bit thicker. That's just a preference. You can change it if you'd like. On a class like this, indicators look nicer when they're bolder. So I'm going to double click on any of the lines of the volume average to format the style. Here in style, I'm going to change the style of the volume, make that thicker. And I'm going to change the style of the volume average and make that thicker. That's all I'm going to do. And I want that to be the default. So I'm going to click on the default button down here. It's going to confirm that I want to change it. I'm going to say yes. And then I click OK. And there it is. What the volume indicator or the volume average indicator is doing, it gives you the same bars for volume. You can see the extent of volume per bar. But it also tells you if the volume is up volume or down volume. So when the volume bar is red, that's because the price went down compared to the previous bar, of course. And when the bar is blue, is because the price went up compared to the previous bar. Whenever you see bars that are white, let me see if I find any. Not on the daily chart because the volume is so... Okay, here we go. We have a bar that is white. Whenever you see a white bar, it's because the closing price of the bar was exactly the same as the closing price of the previous bar. But what I like about this indicator is that it also gives you an average. So that yellow line is averaging volume. So I can see that Apple trades about 44 million shares on a daily basis. Of course, some days are going to be higher. Like, for example, here on this date, December 18th, Apple traded over 90 million shares. How many exactly? I can put my cursor right there, and it tells me right there at the bottom on the data tips, it tells me that it traded 96.4 million shares. But this is a average that calculates based on 50 bars. How do I know that? Because that's the default parameter. Whenever you want to change the calculation parameters of any indicator, you just need to double click on it. I'm going to double click here on this volume indicator. We already talked about styling, but if you come here to the inputs, think of inputs as a window into the calculation parameters of any indicator, and you can change anything you'd like. In this case, it's using an average length of 50. Whenever you see 50 here in the inputs, that is just saying 50 bars. So the calculation is going to be different depending on what you've set your chart to. This is a daily chart, so it's using daily bars. It's using 50 days. But if you have a 5-minute chart, it's going to use 50 of those 5-minute charts. 5-minute bars. So by looking at this graph, I can see that Apple trades about 44 million shares on average if I take on 50 days and calculate it. If I change this chart to 60-minute, I can see the average for every hour. Apple trades an average of 7.6 million shares every hour based on a 60-minute chart. So it's a very interesting indicator, and it allows you to see that calculation, a little bit more information about volume. Let's go back to daily, and you can see how it automatically recalculates as you change the data interval. So you don't have to be concerned about what periods is it calculating. It does that for you automatically. Another great feature of this volume indicator, it allows you to be notified whenever there's out of the ordinary volume. So if you get a day where volume exceeds the average by a certain percentage, wouldn't you want to be alerted? Well, this indicator does precisely that. You have an average volume, but if the volume for that bar exceeds the average by a certain percentage, I want to be in the action. I want to know what's going on. If I double click on this indicator, and this is some functionality that is explained on page 5 of the PDF. It tells you how to turn on the alerts. I'm going to come here to the alerts because, as I said earlier, all alerts in TradeStation are turned off by default. So you have to manually come here and turn it on in order for you to be notified. But I can check this box. I got some behavior just as I saw in drawing tools. You have exact, similar behavior, like alert once per bar, or if they want to be alerted continuously. And you have the messaging preferences. How do you want to be alerted? By sound, by a pop-up window, by an email? You choose the type of alert you want. Once we enable the alert, here in the inputs is where you set the parameters. We find the alert percentage. So any bar that exceeds the average by 50%, in this case that's the default parameter, I'm going to be alerted. If you want to say, only alert me if it's 100%. So if it doubles the average, which is a lot, a double of 44, it's 88. It would have to trade 88 over 88 million shares in order for you to be alerted. So the default's 50. 50% of 44 million, it's 22 million. So you would be alerted if any bar reaches 66 million. Interesting indicator. But once I click OK, you can see here on the volume label, there's an A that just indicates that you have an alert on volume. So if I hover over it, it doesn't show me anything. I thought it would tell me what alert I had. But it allows you to right-click on it and format the analysis technique if you wanted to do so. Susan, you ask an interesting question. Is there a way to turn off all alerts at one time? The answer to that is no. There is not. So sometimes, you enable a lot of alerts. And in order for you to turn off all alerts, there's no easy button. You'd have to go to each one of these analysis techniques and turn them off individually. That would be a great suggestion for developers as well. Richard posted a question about the time displayed here at the bottom. The time displayed at the bottom of every chart it's using your TradeStation, your local time, your computer's local time. So it's not using TradeStation time or the exchange time. Is using your local time. If you want to change the time that is displayed at the bottom, there's a setting here when you format the symbol. We talked about formatting symbol on last class, but if you format the symbol, in the settings tab, there's a display time zone is using local. So it reads your computer clock to determine what the time is going to be. But you can change it to exchange if you wanted to set your times to be exchange time instead. Right? That's a setting that I didn't cover last class, So I do appreciate the question. Just wanted to make sure that everybody knew where to change the time settings of your graph. Okay, Phil is asking a couple good questions. First of all, when you get an alert, how do you know where the alert came from? And this is very important if you have a lot of workspaces and if you have a lot of desktops, you have a lot of things going on, you do get an alert, and sometimes it's hard to know where it came from. Let's go ahead and try to trigger an alert to see if we get anything. Okay, I'm going to go to a 5-minute chart. It's going to be hard to get alerted here. The bar just started, so let's see. Let me set the average to 2. Let's go to 5 minute. This is a 1-minute chart. We're going to set the alert to 0%. If you set the alert to 0%, that means that as soon as it matches it, I should get alerted. So here we're really close to reaching that alert percentage line. It didn't quite break it, so let's wait until the next minute does. So let's wait until this alert gives us this indicator gives us an alert, and I'll show you how to access it. I'm just waiting for it to force it. Theodora, to answer your question in the meantime as we get an alert, no, there's no macro to turn off all the alerts. So that's functionality that would be great as well. Okay, we get the alert here. Let me show it to you. That's what the alert looks like. Did I choose continuous alerts? Let me just change my symbol here. Yeah, alert once per bar. It's enough. Okay. You did see the problem. I had it set to alert continuously, and I was getting alerts every single tick of that bar. You certainly don't want that. This is my pop-up window. It tells me the symbol. It tells me what indicator generated the alert. The volume average is greater than 0%, but it doesn't provide me a lot of information about the workspace where the alert was generated. So let me go ahead and close out of this. When you have an alert generated, you also have access to what's called a message center. So let's go here to the view menu, and you have access to this message center. Okay, let me bring it over here. This will provide you more information about what the alert was triggered. So here we have the symbol that generated the alert. By the way, I'm looking at the tab here at the bottom that says alerts. You have 2 tabs, alerts and messages. So in the alerts tab, you have the symbol that generated the alert, what indicator generated the alert, the interval. It also tells you the date and the time, the window that generated it, the workspace that generated it. So if you name your workspaces correctly, you know exactly where that indicator or where that alert came from. So this is like the control center of all your alerts. It also keeps a record of all historical alerts. So if you're not in front of your computer when the alert was triggered and you want to go back to what was triggered, then you can come here and look at the alerts at any moment. All right. Phil, you also, your question about recording a message. Let me give you something really interesting to think about. If I come over here to my alert settings, and I go over here to configure, there is a voice alert that says text to speech. The text to speech will grab whatever the message is and it'll read it out to you. It uses the computer's text to speech engine. This is not something that it's an engine or a service that TradeStation provides as a platform. If you choose the voice, TradeStation will just read out the text that is inside that alert box. That's all it does. Now you do have the option to select the sound you want. You know, we have some determined sounds here in this menu that you can select. But if you want to choose something that is different, you can configure this and you can play any tune that you want as long as the file is a WAV file. Windows file, TradeStation is able to read it. So you can pretty much configure your alerts to be any sound and any message you need. Phil, your question about the exchange time, would it be most accurate? It all depends on how you it all depends on how comfortable you are with exchange time. You know, sometimes um, traders get in the habit of looking at charts using their local time. So for example, those that are on the West Coast, they know that the market opens at 6:30 in the morning and they want to see the charts displayed on their local time. But some other users, you know, they get used to looking at the charts using exchange time. So when they see the market opening at 9:30 a.m., they already know that that's Eastern time. Or if you're looking at a futures and it's traded in Chicago and you set the charts to exchange time, you just have to be aware of what type of time you're using. Okay. All right. Let's go back. If you get, I do see your question, Kirkton, about having two volume indicators. If you go to Insert Indicator one more time, and I choose, again, Volume Average, and I click on OK, I'll get two. So every time you insert an indicator, TradeStation will display additional space for that second indicator. If you have two, like I do now, just click on one of them, press delete on the keyboard, and it'll go away. You can also go to Format, Analysis Techniques, and here you see a list of all the technical analysis that you have on the chart, and you can use the remove button here on the right to get rid of them. All right. Let me show you some other types of analysis techniques. ShowMes. This is Apple. Let's go to a daily chart. Perfect. If I wanted to know when Apple released earnings, I can go to the Insert menu and click on Show Me. We have some Show Me's that are pre-installed on TradeStation that show you some fundamental data. I want to see EPS postings, earnings per share postings. I'm going to click OK, and automatically I can see when in the bar historically earnings were posted. Right here, if I look at this bar by clicking on the background, I can see the bar, earnings per bar, 117. That's the earnings per bar. And the earnings were $1.97. Okay. If I change this to a weekly chart, I could get a better view of all the earnings that have been posted historically. Here we have 197. Here we have $3.08 back in January 30th of 2015. Here we seem to have a dot. I'm not sure if you're able to see that yellow dot, but I don't see the price on top. And I think we talked about margins here on TradeStation, where if I click on the background dragging and I move this down, I can see a couple of earnings that are outside the margins. Sometimes that happens, especially with text. You don't see the text if it's outside of those margins. I know that I enabled margins for this chart, but if you double click on the symbol and you go to style, I'm sorry, not style, you go to scaling, I can say, give me some margins. I want to add some margins to my graph, maybe a 10% above and a 10% below. When I click OK, it provides me a little bit more space, and sometimes it gives me the ability to see that text that wouldn't be there if it was not for that margin. Your question, Richard, about dividends? Yes, let me see. If I go to Insert Show Me, we probably don't have a dividends Show Me. We do have a dividends indicator. So if I go to indicator and I go to dividends, I should find something. Here it is, dividend, and I click OK. This will just display the dividend as a line here on my chart. See, the dividend, or the most recent dividend, was 52 cents, and the one prior to that was 47 cents. So if I create this as a monthly chart, I can see the history of dividends back on Apple. All right. If you want to do a show me for dividends, there's a little formatting that we need to do. If I go to Format Analysis Techniques, and I go to the format of EPS postings, and I go to the Inputs tab, this is the EPS field, which is a code that is grabbed from our database of fundamental data. So any fundamental data field that you need to display here is available as a code, and you can grab that code and then bring it over here and plot that value. So let me see if I can give you some ideas on what to do. So if I come over here to the help files, let me show you where this is. Let me show you what I've done. And this way you can search for any fundamental data field that you'd like. What I did is I went to search. So when you first bring up, let me start from the beginning so that you can see it from the beginning. I go to help. This is what the help looks like from the very beginning. And I'll show you all the different fields that you can insert. I open up, rather than trying to find out exactly where the topic is that I'm looking for, I click on search right here at the bottom. And I type in the word fundamental. And the very first topic is fundamental analysis. I'm going to double click on it. And here we find two links. We have about fundamental data or fundamental data fields. When I click on fundamental data fields, then it gives me a whole list of different names that I can use inside that box. Let's go over PaintBars. If you go to Insert, a paint bar is very similar to a Show Me, where some bars are going to be painted based on a particular condition. So let's say, for example, that we're looking at bars that are above an average. Price greater than average. Let's take a look at that. I'm going to click OK. And notice how some of the candles are painted a different color, in this case, cyan. What is this indicator telling me? I'm going to double click on, actually I'm going to right click on the candles and say format price greater than average. And what I'm going to do is go to the inputs and change the calculation. This is doing an average of the closing price over a period of 14 bars, and any bars that is above that average is being painted cyan. As simple as that. So let me go ahead and type in a 30-bar average. And if I insert an indicator, like an average indicator, moving average, let me show you. Moving average one line, and I click OK. Let's change the calculation of that line and change it to 30, which is the same as my paint bar. And take a look at what happens. I have a 30-bar moving average, which is my cyan line, and every candle that is above that line is being painted magenta. Here, the candle closed below the line, that's why it's not painted, but every single bar that is above that line is painted magenta. So it's an interesting way of enhancing your visual, because maybe I don't necessarily need this line going across the bars. I can just remove it, because by the color, I can tell if that candle is above the moving average or not. It's an interesting way of enhancing visuals on a chart. All right. Every analysis technique that you have in TradeStation can be formatted. Let me go to Insert, Indicator, and try to do a moving average 2 lines. If you're interested in looking for moving average crossovers, you need to look for a moving average 2 lines. If you want to format the indicator before it goes on the graph, put a check here where it says prompt for format. That way, instead of the indicator going on the chart and you having to double click on it to format, you can just go straight to the format dialog before it goes on the chart. I click OK. So let's say that I'm monitoring a 30 against a 50 bar moving average, or if you want to do a 100 with 200 bar moving average, that's fine. Let me do a 30 with a 50. Okay, we have a fast and a slow. The shorter the length, the faster it'll calculate. I can change the style so that those lines are a little bit thicker and change the default. Once I click OK, the 2 lines go on the screen, and I can see that at certain points they are crossing over. I go back to what I said earlier. You're not going to be alerted on a crossover unless you turn on the alert. See, right a few days ago, the indicators crossed. If you had an alert turned on that bar, you would have gotten this notification. As we did with the moving average, you can double click on the lines for the, I'm sorry, as we did on the volume average, you can just double click on any of the lines of the moving average, go to alerts and enable the alert. Configure the alert, click OK, and now your alert is turned on for moving average 2 lines. As soon as I get a crossover, I should get alerted. Some other information about analysis techniques that you'll appreciate. If you want to display the Fibonacci, not the Fibonacci, I wanted to say the Ichimoku cloud. The Ichimoku cloud has been an indicator, a popular indicator used in TradeStation, was implemented a couple years ago. So if you go to Insert Indicator, let me show you what happens when you try to insert the Ichimoku cloud. When you try to do the Ichimoku cloud, which is part of the list, and you click OK, let's say that we want to use default parameters, you get this little window that is a TradeStation event log. So it does generate an error. The reason for the error is what it says down here. The analysis technique attempted to reference too many bars to the right of the chart. Please adjust the properties of this analysis technique. If you're familiar with the Ichimoku cloud is going to project some lines into the future. To be specific, it's going to do that for 26 bars. So this is the type of indicator that is displaced from the actual bars and it's pushed to the future. Well, in this case, the chart analysis does not have enough space to the right in order to display that analysis technique. Where do you find the space to the right? You find that in Format Symbol. I'm going to double click on the background of this chart to go to Format Window, and in the General tab, I find a box for space to the right. The default is only 5 bars. So if you have an indicator like the Ichimoku cloud that is going to use 26 bars on into the future, then we need to come here and make sure that we have at least 26 bars. You can say, well, give me 30 just to be safe. That's fine. 30 bars into the future, and we're talking about space to the right so that the indicator can draw. When I click OK, I have that space added to the right. Ichimoku is already on the chart. It's just turned off. So if I go to Format, Analysis Techniques, I got my Show Me the Price Greater Than Average, my Volume Average, and I also have my Ichimoku Cloud, which is turned off. You can see the status is turned off. So I can come here to the right, click on Status so that it's turned on, and that's it. I just click on Close. And now the Ichimoku cloud can draw on the chart, and you can see it on the screen, how it's projecting into the future and showing you into the future. Okay. The Ichimoku cloud has its own default lines. I see your question, Vincent. How do you just show the cloud without the other averages? In this case, you'd have to, there's 2 ways you can do it. You can either change the color of the line that matches the background so that it makes it somehow invisible. That's the easiest way. So if you don't want to see the averages, I can come here, double click it, go to the color, and then select the line that you'd like to hide, and then make it black, black, and black. When I click OK, then you can see how I only see the cloud. The lines are still there. They're just somehow invisible because I made them the same color as the background. That's the easiest way to do it. Otherwise, you'll have to go to Easy Language and disable those lines. We have a class here that we go over a little bit of Easy Language, and I'll show you some things will allow you to modify, certain things of indicators, and that's one of those things like the removing lines. Robert, I see your question about placing 2 standard deviations and 3 standard deviation Bollingers on your graph. Again, if I want to remove an indicator, I just click on the indicator, press delete on the keyboard. That's the easiest way. Bollinger Bands is already part of the platform. If I go to Insert Indicator, Bollinger Bands is there, and I just click OK, and OK. By default, Bollinger Bands is drawing 2 standard deviations above and 2 standard deviations below. If you want to change it to 3 standard deviations, just double-click on the Bollinger Band, go to Inputs, and here's the parameters for the standard deviations. I can change that to 3 and -3. Click OK. So that changes the calculation of the Bollinger Band. So double-clicking on the indicator allows you to change it. Brian, thank you for the suggestion. That's absolutely correct. In the example that we did with the Ichimoku cloud, where we made the lines the color of the background, you can also make them transparent. And that's how and that's a great use of the transparency functionality to allow you to do that. Okay, let's jump over to page 6 and 7 of the PDF. I didn't realize that we were running out of time, and we have a very important topic to cover, which is multi-data analysis. And Alfred, to answer your question, can you have 2 Bollinger Bands for each chart? Most certainly. I can come here to Insert, Indicator, and you can do that as many times as you need to. I can select Bollinger Bands again and click OK. So now I have a Bollinger Band set at 2 standard deviations and another Bollinger Band set at 3 standard deviations, and I have them overlaid on top of the graph. Let's go ahead and start with a brand new graph. When I click on Trading Apps, click on Chart Analysis. For those that are futures traders, you may be interested in the difference between the index and the actual futures, which is called the premium. So I'm going to come over here and plot ESH16 on a daily chart. This is the futures based on the S&P E-minis, the S&P 500. Okay, so let's go ahead and combine this graph with the actual index, because I want to calculate the difference of the value of the futures against the value of the index. In order for you to create a multi-data chart, go to Insert, Symbol. That's a way to create or to bring in other data streams into the chart. Insert Symbol, and I'm going to type in the symbol for the S&P 500, SPX.X, $SPX.X, and I'm going to click on Plot. And you can see that the chart is automatically divided into 2. The top is my futures, the bottom is my index. If you look at the value here on the right-hand side, the future is 1886, the index is 1893. Very close to each other, but I want to calculate the difference historically. By the way, a couple things before I continue. You can do Insert Symbol up to 50 different times. So it does allow you to create a multi-data chart that has up to 50 different symbols. And they don't have to be necessarily different symbols. You can insert the same one. The same one creates a very interesting analysis tool, because you can have one symbol at a 5-minute, a second symbol at a 30-minute, and a third symbol at a 60-minute, so that you can, do calculations in different time frames. Or if you're looking for confirmation on different time frames, you can do that on one single chart. Here I only have 2 symbols, which is fine. The chart is divided in 2. There is an invisible line right here running across the 2 charts. If I put my cursor right on that invisible line, notice how the cursor changes into a 2-headed arrow, allowing me to click and drag so that you can resize these little subgraphs. So if you need more space, just put your cursor somewhere in between, wait until the cursor changes, and then you can move the divisor up and down. Let's go to the Insert menu. We have some indicators that automatically calculate in multi-data. One of those indicators, let me go here to Insert Indicator. One of those indicators is called the spread diff. Right here, we have a spread diff and a spread ratio. One creates a difference. The other, of course, creates a ratio, divides one into the other. The other one just subtracts one from the other. So I'm going to do a spread diff, and when I click OK, you can see how in the parameters, and this is something interesting, data series 1 is close of data 1, and data series 2 is close of data 2. So what this indicator does, it's using the closing prices of data 1 and data 2 and then doing the mathematical formula. When I click OK, you can see the line right there at the bottom. Right now, the difference is -7 points, the difference between the futures and the actual index. All right. A couple things that I wanted to point out. Stephanie's getting an error that says you may not mix symbols with different delays in the same window. It's an interesting message because it just tells you that if you have delayed data on any of the symbols that you're trying to mix, it won't let you. So the only way that you can mix symbols together if you're subscribed to real-time data on those symbols. That way it can synchronize the two data streams correctly. Remember that if they're delayed, there's different delays for different symbols depending on the exchange that they're in. So if you're mixing symbols, you can only do it with real time. The time frame can be changed. Yes, Vincent, thank you for that question. Right here, I have the difference on a daily interval. But if I come here to the chart and I type in weekly, and I'm just doing it as I did on any regular chart, and I hit enter, now I have my weekly futures, my weekly S&P index, and I have the difference on a weekly interval. So it's an interesting way of changing the data intervals as well. Let's go back to daily. And you can see that as I change the data intervals, it changes on all the symbols that are on the graph. Makes it very convenient. This is also great to create spreads. So if you're an options trader and you want to see the history on a particular spread, you just need to change the symbols to option symbols, and then it tells you the spread. Let me see if I can quickly show you an example. I come here to Format Symbol. Let's go ahead and change the symbol to Microsoft. I'm going to go back to Format Symbol, click on Lookup, go to Options. Let's say that I want to do a spread on Microsoft using the 52 call and the 51 call. So I'm going to do the 52 call. I'm going to click OK. And I'm going to do a 30-minute chart. Let's do a 5-minute. This is a 5-minute chart of the 52 call. I go to Insert Symbol, click on Lookup. Again, go to Options, Microsoft, and let's say that I choose the 51 call. And I plot it right there at the bottom. Now I have the two option symbols in place, and it's just a matter of going to Insert, Indicator, and calculate the spread diff between the two. So this is actually giving you a historical spread on the two symbols. Of course, it's not using bid and ask, it's just using trade price. So some of the limitations that you have to think of, and but this will give you some approximation of where the price has been of this particular spread. It's an interesting concept of doing multi-data charts. Let's go back here to another chart and give you another example of what you can do with multi-data. I'm going back to Apple on a daily interval. And multi-data chart also allows you to do a relative performance, like compare the performance of one symbol against another. So let's say, for example, we wanted to format or we wanted to gauge how Apple is doing when compared to the Dow Jones. I'm going to insert symbol, insert the symbol for the Dow Jones, that is $INDU, and that goes right here at the bottom of my screen. So I have the symbol for Apple on top and the symbol for the Dow Jones at the bottom. Once I have that, I just have to turn my graph into a percent change chart. And I'm pretty sure you'll like this functionality. I'm going to right-click on my graph. and there's an option called percent change chart. When I enable it, take a look at what happened. The two symbols are turned into a line, and it's a percentage line. If I scroll all the way back, this is on my daily chart. We know that a daily chart goes back 2 years. But at the very beginning, notice how the two lines start at the exact same point. If you see that horizontal line, the red horizontal line, that is 0%. So we're starting off all the symbols that you have on the graph at 0%. From that point, TradeStation calculates how much each changes in price. So at a certain point, the two lines were very close to each other. One of the lines started to move away from the other, so it outperformed. In this case, the green line is Apple. You can see the color up here. Orange, you can see in the status line, is the Dow Jones. If you also wanted to see more detail, just click and hold your mouse button, and you can see how the color refers to the specific symbol. Green to Apple, orange to Dow Jones. But now if I come all the way forward, I can see that Apple is up 23% from 2 years ago, as opposed to the Dow, which is actually is down 1.8% since the beginning of 2 years ago. If you wanted to do an additional comparison, let's say if you look here on the time scale, you see where 2016 begins. Let's say that you wanted to measure their performance from the beginning of this year. It's only been, 3 weeks. I can right-click somewhere in the vicinity of where that 2016 begins. You're going to right-click on that vertical axis, going to percent change chart. Actually, you don't see it there. So let me go ahead and let me choose a different date so that you can see it on the screen. Let's say that I want to do the calculation from December 1st, right here. Here's December. If I want to choose the exact date, what I do is I always left click and I drag it to where the exact date is, right there, December 1st. Release the left mouse button and right click. Then I go to percent change chart and I have the option to calculate from this bar. Notice how the two lines again start at the 0% line, right exactly where we told it to start on December 1st of 2015. We can see how Apple now is down 17% since the 1st of December, whereas the Dow Jones is only down 9%. So we see how Apple is underperforming compared to the Dow Jones. So great comparison tool that allows you to do these types of relative performance. So feel free to use this multi-data analysis to create these types of charts. Antonio, I see your question about the super trend indicator. I don't believe we have it, but if it's something you can find in the library or the trading app store, you can bring it in to TradeStation if you need to do so. And yeah, Phil. Phil has a question about, if he's using the premium, the example that we did earlier with the futures and the S&P. If you look at a specific futures, it gives you the overnight, which doesn't exist on the index. So you see these gaps. So Phil, to answer your question, instead of using a chart of ESH16, which gives you the overnight, use ESH16.D. So when you use the .D, that removes the overnight, and it'll follow pretty closely the same times of the index, and that way you avoid those gaps that you see if you're looking at the premium. All right. A couple of things that I wanted to mention, which is functionality found on page 8 and 9, is importing from the Easy Language Library and also from the Trading App Store. We have only 7 minutes, so let me concentrate on these two topics, And any questions, I'll close the class and I'll stay a couple minutes so I can answer those questions in the chat. But let me show you this functionality. If you go here to a new chart and you go to Insert Indicator, from within the Insert Indicator, you have an Import button. You can import from the Trading App Store. Let me show you one example so you can see what you can do, what are the capabilities. Let me bring over the Trading App Store website because that's where it goes when you go to import from the Trading App Store. And let's say that you're looking for VWAP. I know that in a class somebody wanted to chart the VWAP. So let's go here and search VWAP. And we have a few indicators here that you can see how some of them are leased at a monthly fee and some of them are totally free. Okay, so if you want to install something that it's free, just click on the name of the indicator. It tells you some information about what the indicator does. And in this case, it's free. Not really sure. I haven't seen this indicator. I think it's new. But it does tell you this graph on the chart. What it does also, it gives you a PDF here on the right-hand side, which is a support document, and it explains the indicator. But from here, I can click on Install from the website, and it's going to ask you to log in as a client. But one of the great things about the Trading App Store is that the indicator that you bring over to TradeStation will be part of your login. So let me go ahead and click on Login. Use my credentials here. Let me just move them outside of my screen and just log in as you would do in your account. And I'm just going to answer my security question outside of the viewer. But now let me come over here again. Let me move my screen over here. And I can see the information about the indicator. You agree to the terms and conditions and say complete installation. Okay, so it's going to do that. And the product name is sudi.gan SQ9 calculator. Notice how as soon as I clicked on install, this download complete message comes up. Click the launch button to begin using your product. When I click on launch, see how it opens up the workspace that I found in the Trading App Store directly inside my TradeStation. So this is an indicator that was not part of TradeStation. I found it in the Trading App Store. I read about it. I liked what it did, and now I'm able to see it on the screen. I haven't studied this indicator at all. I'm not really sure what it does and what it means because this is the first time that I see it, but I just wanted to show you that you can go to the Trading App Store and add more indicators that are not part of the trading platform by default. There's a lot of indicators out there that are free, like this one. You can just install on your TradeStation. And there's others that are a little bit more advanced and more complex where you do have to pay a monthly fee, but most of them have a free trial that you can use it, try it out, and cancel it if you don't need it. Remember that it's also a community where you review products. These are not indicators that are created by TradeStation. This is a community of developers that are developing indicators for TradeStation. And that's why sometimes we're not aware of the specifics of the calculation because it's designed and created by a third party. Okay? Perfect. You can also import from the discussion forums. So when I come over here to, let me open up a new tab here and go to TradeStation.com. If you go to TradeStation.com, I'll show you where a lot of indicators are as well. Free indicators that you can bring in over to your TradeStation. All right, that's not the page that I wanted. I just want TradeStation.com. There we go. Okay. In TradeStation.com, you go to Community and you go to Discussion Forums. Right here, we talked about the enhancement suggestion forms. This is where it would be. Okay, and the first form here is the Easy Language Library. There's a lot of documents here. It'll ask me to log in, and if you haven't logged in, it's going to ask you to do it. This is your forum screen name. This is not your TradeStation screen name. So if you haven't registered, I believe there is a place where you can register. It asks you to register to the forums. Let me just log in quickly here. All right, I just logged in. Let me just push it over. Go to my easy language library. I see all the topics that have been created here. Okay, and we have information about any indicator. Let's say that I'm interested in this one that says Solidus price volume histogram. When I click on it, this gives me information about the indicator, and most of these indicators will give you a little screenshot of what it looks like. This is a volume or price volume histogram. It seems like it's giving you volume per price level right on the graph. But the interesting thing is that at the very top, it tells you who developed it. In this case, it was Chris Cheatham. And it also gives you a link to that file. This is an ELD. If I click on it, I can open the file. This is a download that goes right into your TradeStation. It takes you to the import wizard. It's going to import a function and an indicator. The name of the indicator is right here, is Solidus price volume histogram. I click on finish. Some of the files are going to be brought over. I say yes to all, and it says it's going to transfer everything. Okay, once it imports everything, I can go to a chart analysis. And if I look at the example that he provides on the screen, this is a chart of at ESD on a 5-minute. So I go here, and I say at ESD on a 5-minute, and I go to insert indicator, and it should be somewhere here. Here it is. This is the indicator that was not part of my TradeStation, and I brought it from the Easy Language Library. When I click OK, I'm just going to use the default parameters to see if it works. It says waiting for data. There it is. It's kind of odd the way that it displays, but I just have to maybe play around with the indicator to see how it's being displayed. You can see the graphs right there. Okay. There's a couple questions here that I wanted to answer before ending the class. Barbara, I'm not really sure what issues you're having, so we may have to talk about that offline. Send me an email if you still have those issues. Susan, I do agree with you. VideoStation is a great application. If you haven't played around with the VideoStation, it's right here on Trading Apps. VideoStation is that button. It allows you to sort through all the videos that are available on the on-demand section of TradeStation. If you don't have VideoStation, search for it on the Trading App Store. It's available. It's a free install. It'll appear right there in your tools. Richard, your question about is it possible that these will overload or overwrite, I think is what you mean, any existing functions and corrupt any of the default function indicators? There is a possibility, Richard, but most of the developers will not touch the functions. Functions are read-only documents, so they cannot be edited. Most of these functions are attached to an indicator, and you'll see a confirmation message. Are you sure you want to overwrite them? For the most part, it's safe to do so because these functions cannot be edited, but they are attached to the original indicator. So just be aware of that. If the developer creates an indicator that has the same name of an indicator you have on your TradeStation and you choose to overwrite it, it's going to, yes, replace it completely. And Phil, we did a percent change chart to do a relative strengths comparison. That's the best way to do it. And Barbara, your question about removing the toolbar on the left, just go to the View menu, Toolbars, and that's a way to enable and disable toolbars on TradeStation. If you don't want to see drawing, just make sure the drawing is unchecked. Vincent, the PDF for this file is available at the bottom right corner of the player. I'll make sure to share the PDF with everyone so that you can have it there as well. Okay, perfect. So I'm going to end the class. We ran out of time. In fact, I went over 3 minutes, but I do appreciate the time that you spent here with me. I hope that at least you got some benefit from this class. Tomorrow at 10:30 a.m. we're going to do lesson number 6, which is strategy testing, optimization, and automation. We'll talk about some great functionality in TradeStation to test trading ideas. But I just want to say again that it was a great pleasure spending this time with all of you, and the room will stay open for the next couple of minutes. So if you have any last-minute comments or any last-minute questions, feel free to submit them right now. And for me and everyone else here at TradeStation, thank you for your time, and see everyone tomorrow. Have a good night, everyone. Bye-bye.